Welcome. You're listening to a 2019 Right on Con podcast. This is Sue Stanley from the Right on Con team. I'm excited to be speaking to author Hanna Alkaf. Hanna is the author of The Weight of Our Sky from Salam Reads Publishing, and it is available on February the 5th, 2019. Welcome, Hanna.
Thank you for having me. I'm
Can
excited.
you, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. We're very excited to have you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am. The first thing you should know about me is that I'm what I call an unapologetically Malaysian writer. I am Malaysian, born and raised, and lived here my entire life, except for 6 years that I lived in Chicago, in Illinois. And my all the stories that I write are stories that are set in my country and center around my people.
That's wonderful.
Mhm.
A rich tapestry of people to write about and stories to tell. Can you tell me or tell us, share with us, what makes publishing in the West appealing to authors around the world?
Sure. The first thing that I would say is that it's not so much about getting validation from the West. I don't really need Western entities to tell me that my stories are valid or have value, but it is a way to get people outside of Malaysia to notice stories that are not about the West or set within the West, and a way to get that narrative seen all over the world because the hub of publishing really is set in the West. So local publishing, Malaysian publishing, has done a lot of great things. There are a lot of great authors that are locally published, but our industry just hasn't reached the same levels. So the West, publishing in the West gives more reach for stories that would otherwise just stay within our own countries.
Okay, that's exciting. That's very exciting. How did you go about, aside from the fact that you lived in the United States for 6 years,
Mhm,
when you were ready to publish, how
mhm.
did you go about, what was your process for querying and reaching out from where you live and how you actually followed through with that goal?
Sure. I don't think the process was much different for me, just as it is with any other aspiring author. You have to go through the query route. You have to make a list of agents that you wanted to query. The only real difference for me was that I was careful when I was making my list of agents to query that I was including agents that already had a diverse list. I didn't want to be anybody's token representation on their list. I didn't want to be the token author of color on anybody's list. I wanted people who had a proven track record of working with authors who were telling diverse stories from diverse backgrounds. And so that was the only real consideration for me, besides the fact that I had to think about time differences and when to schedule Skype calls and things like that. But other than that, the query process for me was pretty much the query process that anybody else goes through. It was slush file queries. It wasn't. I didn't have any like insider, inside track or any connections or anything like that.
So just like the rest of us with the querying.
Pretty
Um,
much went through the
yeah,
same pain and the same suffering and the same waiting on responses. Yeah, just the same as anybody else.
that's great. What did you use? Did you have how did you research your agents? When you said that you spent a lot of time researching to make sure that you were not going to be the only person of color, the token person of color on their list. How did you um, learn who agents were representing before you queried?
um, the same way anybody else does. I guess the internet. I went onto all the agents' personal websites as well as their agency websites. I took a look at their list of authors. I, followed them on Twitter and saw how they interacted with other people and what kind of issues they spoke about and things like that. And obviously, you can't know a person from doing all those things, but you could get a pretty good sense of what kind of books they were representing and what kind of books they were selling. So that's what I did. I also subscribed to Publishers Marketplace at least for like that month or two
Mhm.
that I was querying, just so that I could see what recent sales had been made and things like that. And of course, I went on to forums like Absolute Right and Query Tracker and all those places to see what kind of feedback they were giving other aspiring authors, because you do want to be aware and careful about agents who aren't quite what they seem. So, who might take advantage of a newbie author. So, yeah, I pretty much just tried to do my due diligence.
That's great. What do you suggest for authors who are also looking to publish that live outside the West and are looking to publish in with Western publishers? What do you recommend they do as kind of a first step once their manuscript is complete, of course, because you have to write a book
Right,
before you query anyone. But what do you
right.
suggest that they do?
Um, First of all, the manuscript being complete is one thing, but I think you have to be very aware the kind of stories you want to write and the kind of voice that you have and the author that you want to be. Because it'll be easy, it's easy once you step into this broader world of publishing to be swayed by the many voices that start telling you what is best. And they're well meaning voices, but they're not necessarily telling you what's best for you. You have to know that yourself. So, as a person who from the beginning wanted to write Malaysian stories, um, if I listened to some of those voices, then the Malaysianness of those stories might have gotten diluted along the way. So if you are writing from outside the US, then I would say, first of all, be very confident and very sure in the type of writer you want to be. But from there, I would say just make sure you do your research. Make sure, like I said, that you are submitting to agents who have your best interests at heart and will not take advantage of you. And I would also say start getting to know the community of authors, because there's a huge presence online, especially for young adult authors and middle grade authors, to a certain extent, mostly young adult though. There's a huge community that's very active online of authors and readers and bloggers and agents and all the people who are involved in creating books for young people. So
Mhm.
if you just start taking part in that community, I think it becomes a little bit easier and it feels less like you're alone doing this because you are very far away from everybody else.
I was just going to ask you, I mean, that's a really interesting point, and I know that that's true for authors, regardless of their culture, regardless of the writing that they do, that there can be a lot of pressure to change a story, to edit a story into almost a completely different story
Right.
in order to meet the needs of or the expectations of another person.
Right.
And what did you do to get support to kind of hold your ground and feel comfortable? Did you have a place to go for support, people that you spoke to, a critique group or a writing group, anything like that that was helpful to you?
In the process of writing the story, I had, of course, beta readers and critique partners who were supportive, who helped me get the story to the point that it needed to be to start querying. But the other thing um, that I did was that I was very upfront with every agent that I spoke with and every editor that I've spoken with since, that I am out here to write my culture and my people and my country, and that's one of those things that I do, and I won't apologize for that. So while obviously I have to be open to feedback and to critique and things like that, I have to know the difference between something that will change that fundamental need of mine to tell those stories versus something that is structural or that has to do with craft that I need to be open to and accept and change and improve. So getting to know the difference between those two things is very important. Um,
Y-
but I am very lucky in that my agent and my editor completely, the people that I work with completely understand this need and um, stand by the fact that this is what I want to do and these are the stories that I want to tell.
you list some other publications that you have written for,
Sure.
mainly magazine articles and that sort of thing. Was that helpful to you in kind of knowing where to go and what to do when you were ready to query your book?
to be honest, not at all. Um, Magazine publishing is is a completely different animal from book publishing, and also the publications that I wrote for were largely Malaysian iterations of international publications. So when it says things like Marie Claire and Esquire and things like that, I'm talking about the Malaysian versions of Marie Claire and Esquire and things like that. So to be honest, like my background in journalism helped me to write the book because I had a strong foundation in how to do research, how to do interviews, how to structure a story a certain way, and things like that. Um, but in terms of helping to get the book published, it didn't really do anything for me.
I think that's a common experience. each
Well,
each gr- e-
I
Go ahead.
think what it does when you tell someone, when you tell an agent or an editor that you have a background in journalism and you mentioned that you went to journalism school or whatever, is that it tells people that you have a certain proficiency with words and you have the ability to work under deadlines, you have that training. And those are important things for an author to have, but they're not going to sell your book for you. Your book is what's going to sell your book.
And
So,
that's a perfect segue into my next set of questions. And that is that your book comes out in about 2 weeks. And
oh, you have
I
to
know,
remind me. It's so stressful. Okay.
what are you doing? What is your process now for helping to promote your writing? Are you using social media? Or do you have, does where you live impact things like giveaways? Um, can you talk to me about that process for you?
Sure. Obviously, I have to use social media because otherwise, half the people, like half my audience, wouldn't know who I was. Um, so I use social media a lot. In particular, Twitter is my platform of choice. I'm probably on it way too much when I should be writing. Um, but I'm not a fan uh, of all the marketing buzzwords that go around how to use social media as an author. um, I'm in a debut group the way most people are, and there's always a lot of questions about how you build your audience online, how do you grow your audience on Twitter, and things like scheduled posts and these type of posts do well, and you should follow these kinds of people and get them to retweet you. And to me, it's not about that because social media is your opportunity to engage with other people and connect with other people and let them get to know you, and there has to be an element of authenticity and being genuine about that, because otherwise people will see through you as a sort of sales machine. um, and you don't want that, you don't want that at all, um, because the connections are what's going to carry you through. So I use Twitter a lot. I use it to connect with the YA and the Kid Lit community in general. I use it to connect with readers and reviewers. Um, I Whenever I run pre-order campaigns or giveaways or things like that, I always open them internationally because I'm an international reader myself, and I know what it's like to be sort of shut out from giveaways, to have books be too expensive to buy, to have library systems that are not as reliable as you might get in the US. And so I try to make giveaways and pre-orders that are available to everyone, because it's not fun being a reader outside the West, um, when it's so expensive compared to it's really expensive to be a reader outside the West. So I do try to open any giveaways that I have up to other countries as well, and that costs me, but it's fine. I'll take on that cost. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah,
Well, that's generous of you because I know that is an issue
it is.
around the world.
It is.
So, yeah, I mean the difference in exchange rates and everything else can really impact that.
Mhm.
So, are there any advantages to being where you are? You have written a Malaysian story, and you live in Malaysia, and you are marketing in Malaysia. Is there any part of that that's helpful to you? Are you able to um, make books available to sell in your home market?
It's been helpful because because of that, my publisher is releasing an international paperback at the same time as the hardcover version. Now, usually paperbacks would go on sale for a book a year after it's first released, right? Depending on,
Mhm.
and sometimes depending on sales, like sometimes depending on how well the hardcover actually does. But my publisher is releasing an international paperback edition at the same time as the hardcover. This is great because a hardcover in my country would cost 80 Malaysian ringgit, which is a lot of money, but
Mhm.
a paperback will be about half that price. So it's still not a small amount of money, but it's more affordable than 80 ringgit. Um, the other thing about marketing when I'm right here is that I know it's easier for me to get in touch with everybody who can help me to market this book here. So I've been very blessed in that bookstore buyers and my regional distributor and the local media have all been very, very supportive and really want to help lift me up. And the local reading community has really come together and been very into helping me promote and helping me by pre-ordering the book and things like that. So it's easier for me to reach my audience here because I have a lot of support. In the US, it feels, well, because it's a very big industry in the US, everything feels very remote and distant for me, and it's really hard to make those connections. I can't go and meet booksellers. I can't go and be on panels with the right people at the right conferences. So it's nice to be here and to be able to be hands on about my own marketing.
No, that's exciting. That's wonderful to hear that you have such support. Are you making yourself available once your book is available, or even now, for
Mhm.
things like school visits and like Skype calls and that sort of thing?
Yes, I am. There is a page set up on my website for uh, any schools or book clubs that want to set up Skype calls. Again, it's always going to be a little bit difficult because of the time difference, but I'll always figure out a way to work around that. So I'm definitely open to school visits and Skype visits, um, especially because I know the events of the book are so alien to so many people on that side of the world. I'm happy to jump on a call and help people understand a little better where I'm coming from. There's also a really excellent study guide being prepared by my publisher that should be online all soon if it isn't already. So
So are you going to be promoting through like the library market? I mean, there's a lot of interest in multicultural education across all
right.
of the Western world, not just in the United States, but
Mhm.
in Canada, in Europe, where people are looking for stories that are authentic to different cultures, so that students can learn about them. So, are you working with libraries or with any other groups to try to get that information out and available to educators?
I am not personally doing that. Because I first of all I don't know how to do that. I'm all the way over here. I know the book. My publisher did send the book off for reviews to trade publications and things like that. So I know there are librarians and educators who have already read it and have it on their radar. And I'm very thankful for that. I'm not sure what else I can personally do to help push that, but I'm always open to suggestions.
Well, if I have any for you, it just seems like that would be a really interesting place to go for
Right.
you.
I've
Yeah.
seen I've seen a lot of mentions on Twitter about or in reviews about how people intend to use the book in the classroom and contrast it with other books about race relations and things like that, and sort of do a study on that. And I think that's really cool. Um, I personally don't know how to reach out to more people about that, but like I said, open to ideas
Well,
anytime.
I'm sure that that will be a part of your process going forward. Once your book is available, it's very exciting. So let's shift a little bit from marketing to your writing process, since we have a few more minutes.
Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit about your um, aside from the cultural aspects of wanting to tell a story that is based in Malaysia and about Malaysian people and filled with Malaysian culture, what drove you to write the story that you've written?
Um, I really wanted to write about the race riots of 1969, because for us it's not really a thing that gets talked about. It is included in our history syllabus, but it's basically a couple of paragraphs. It's covered in a couple of paragraphs in our history textbooks, and they once you condense a huge event like that into and distill them into just the facts, it becomes very sterile, and it doesn't become something that's affecting or even memorable. It just becomes something that you learn for exams. And I just always thought that that was wrong, that you don't honor the memories of people who lived through such a horrific event by sort of glossing over them, and talking about how you fixed everything instead of focusing on what actually went wrong. And so I just always really wanted to delve into the story of those riots and what it was like to live through those riots. So that was the big thing for me. And the thing is that I'm in my 30s, and when I learned this in school, it was already just taught to us like that, just a couple of paragraphs. My worry was that as the generation who lived through the riots begins to die out, um, and as we grow to lose those stories, then the younger generation really has nothing to hold on to, nothing to remember about these riots that so impacted the way our country is run even today. So I really just wanted to create something that would help those stories live on. Um, and I'm very fortunate that there was a publisher that wanted to pick this up, and that there's been interest in this story, because for me it's a story that's written primarily for Malaysians and for Malaysian young people in particular. But I'm very glad that it seems to have resonated with a lot more other people than that.
I think so. I think there's a lot that would resonate with a lot of people. Were you under pressure, or have you felt any pressure, or are you concerned about pressure once the book actually becomes available, from the education community, the other people who might rather that story be told in a different way or in a more clinical, less emotional way as you learned it in your history books?
I've thought about it, but uh, I do feel pressure, but mostly the pressure of expectation of what it means to represent your people in this way. Because when there are so few of us out here doing this, then your story is expected to stand in for everyone. It's a sort of burden of representation thing that happens for a lot of authors of color, right?
Hmm.
So my worry has always been more, my anxiety stems from the fact that I really don't want to disappoint anybody in the way that the story has been written. I don't want to let anybody down. I don't want to misrepresent or be downright harmful, in anything that I've written. But as for worry about what maybe more official sources might think about the story, no, I haven't even thought about that.
That's
Um,
good. I'm glad
it's
you
not
don't have
really,
to.
it's not really a thing that I'm concerned about.
That's good.
If I raise some hackles, then so be it. I stand by the research that was done for this story. I stand by the stories that were told to me in confidence by supervisors, and helped me tell this story. I, yeah, I stand by what it is. We're not told until after the fact, and the problem is that when you don't learn your history, then you're just sort of doomed to keep repeating it. Um, and
Exactly.
and the worst part, and I tell people this all the time, but the worst part is that I was working on edits for this story from my editor, in 2017, and the Charlottesville riots happened,
Yeah.
and it was really really sad.
Thank you very much, Hanna Alkaf. Again, Hanna's book is The Weight of Our Sky from Salam Reads Publishing. And Good luck to you, Hannah. Hannah, excuse me. I wish you well, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. Have fun in the rest of Right On.
Thank you. You too.